As I said in the courtyard, Rogation Day has this theme of connection with farming, and that's a distant concern for most of us today. But I think it's important to remember how, if you will, deeply rooted Jesus' community was in the soil, the earth of his homeland. Almost everyone in Jesus' community was either a farmer or a herdsman, with a few fishermen thrown in. And if you think of the Gospels, so many of the Gospel stories are using images that are drawn from the life of farming or sheep herding. One of the Rogation Day Gospels is a very simple parable that Jesus tells about the kingdom. And in that story, he says, a farmer goes out to throw seed on the ground, and he goes away. And on their own, the seeds spring up and grow and produce a rich harvest. There's this sense of it's kind of a mysterious process. It's a reminder that in God's creation, living things, seeds, plants, animals have this kind of instinct. They're programmed to grow. And with respect to plants, you don't really need to do a lot to make something grow. You need to provide a good growing medium. The soil has to be fertile, and then you have to provide water. But that's really all there is to it. When we moved to the Portland area 35 years ago, to a house with a large yard out in the suburbs, we arrived in August, and it was hot and dry. And I was eager to get out in the yard and start doing stuff because I had been a gardener for a while and loved gardening, as so many of us do. But besides the grass, everything on the property was covered with black plastic and then bark dust on top of that. Well, I thought, I'll go out and I'll give it a try. I'll put my shovel in and see what it's like. So I took off the black plastic, a little patch of black plastic, and then moved aside the bark dust. And I put my shovel in, bang! It was like hitting a rock or concrete, because that clay soil was so hard and had not been cared for ages, probably since the house was put in. And I had a moment of despair because I thought, I'm not going to be able to grow anything here. It's impossible. I grew up in the Puget Sound area where the soil is completely different and much easier to work. And I thought, this soil won't grow anything. But in fact, the clay soil that the Willamette Valley is blessed with is extremely rich soil, full of micronutrients. And it will grow lots of things. But you have to nurture it, you have to tend it, you have to make it so that it's easier to work with. So the last 35 years, I've been adding compost and mulch to the soil, and I'm at the point now, and have been for a while, where I can grow pretty much anything in that clay soil because it's been enriched, it's been tended carefully. In fact, it's so productive now. Most of the time in the summer, my garden is completely overgrown because everything just springs up and goes crazy. Well, I want to use that idea of soil. I want to talk a little bit about dirt and the way that we could apply it to how we think about working with young people and with people in general. Many years ago, when I was working as a chaplain and teacher at Oregon Episcopal School, I had a number of times when I was working alongside the cantor at Temple Beth Israel in downtown Portland. And as you may know, a cantor in a Jewish synagogue works very closely with young people, preparing them for bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah. And she said to me at one point, we were working on some project, she said, "You and I are both seed planters." And what she meant by that was that we work with young people and we try to instill with them ideas and values and encourage them to think about principles of living, but we don't always get to see what the fruits of that work is, because it takes some time, a lot of time sometimes with young people to develop and mature. But you trust that in nurturing young people, eventually something as good is going to happen. And I confess some of my favorite students that I worked with over the years were students that were, how should we say, a pain in the neck. And they were some of my favorites because they were people with whom I had to develop a relationship. I had to invest a lot of my own energy and care and concern in order to establish a relationship. Because I would say that the key thing to working with young people, to being an educator, is preparing the ground, tending the soil, and to me, that's developing relationships. You can in schools, you can have great curriculum, you can have great teachers, you can have great programs, but the key, the foundation of helping young people grow and mature is developing relationships, rich relationships. And that's a slow and sometimes tedious process. It involves, daily interactions, careful listening, showing care and compassion at all times, practicing forgiveness, being able to laugh and cry with young people as they have their stresses and strains. But as an educator, if you develop those kinds of relationships, then there's a growing trust. And it's that trust that allows students to send down deep roots and develop their own identity. This is what allows students to become the people that they want to be, that we want them to be accepted and respected for exactly who they are and what they are. Well, that process of tending the soil, developing relationships, being attentive to the ground that things are grown in, applies to any community. As a Christian community, as a community of faith, we can be excited about the liturgy. We can think that the music program is fantastic. The educational program is good. But ultimately, what really is the foundation of a Christian community, like any community, is the careful tending and nurturing of relationships in the community. And it's that same process. It's paying attention to people, being ready to listen, reaching out to people who are different, showing care and compassion, practicing forgiveness. And it's a slow and sometimes, as I said, tedious process. But that's the process by which we nurture people's growth so that they are able to be fruitful in the way that God intends them to be. Well, this morning we are relaunching the church school. And Martin is in the chapel now with some of our children. And the thing that I want to say is that, tending young people and helping them to grow in faith is not something that is just up to a few church school teachers. It really depends on the whole fabric of the community. It's up to us to cultivate those relationships with young people. That's the growing medium that they need in order to prosper. And so for all of us, reaching out to young people, listening, paying attention, sharing in different experiences, showing an interest, and practicing compassion and care when kids don't always do what we want them to do. That's what is going to allow every child in the congregation to feel like, I'm a part of this. People care about me here. I trust people here. And it's that sense that will allow young people, will allow all of us to grow and flourish and bear fruit. Amen.